Well, friends, part two. And continuing on, as we always do. And I found another interesting quote from that same book by Paul Beard, section called The Second Heaven. Perhaps the most important change which has come over me in the period since I left the earth is the deepening of the realization and confirmation of the serialized life, which we all lead. There's a definite continuing thread. One meets old friends, tired companions, and former teachers. Tried companions, not tired. From conversations and communions with them and through listening to their stories, the missing portions of one's own experience return to memory, and the pattern is built up anew. Not that the pattern of the continued life was ever completely lost. As the chief actor in my own particular drama, I had become, as it were, so immersed in the last act or chapter that the incidents, tragedies, lessons of the previous scenes had tended to grow misty. But now I am beginning to slowly and laboriously piece together these scenes into a whole, into a serialized effort at living. Many of the incidents which have been jogged back into my memory by the confrontation of its co-actors long obscured in my consciousness come as a shock to me. Could this have been how I thought, spoke, and acted? What great similarity is there in all the acts, yet how different? The essence is steady and serene, the persona changing and elusive. As I meditate upon some flash of memory, some beat on the chain of experience, either on this plane, the earth plane, or some other plane, the plan unfolds itself, only partially, of course, to my fascinated gaze. Did I pass up this great chance? Did I respond in such a puerile way? Did I not learn to listen to those vague memory flashes that spoke to me from time to time during all the experiences, which separatist thinking often turned into escapades? Had I sunk so far into matter that I had forgotten lessons already learned, philosophies so often established, as real to my mind? Truly, I must have. The comparisons fill me with dismay. Well, we could read more and more from this book. There's all kinds of interesting stuff. And a perennial question asked often by opponents of reincarnation is, why do we not remember our past lives? The answer is that many do remember, although usually only in fragmentary ways. What is thus recalled, however, invariably needs a spiritual interpretation if proper use is to be made of it. Usually it points unmistakably to a lesson or difficulty in the present life situation. Many probably possess the delicate receptive antennae necessary to pick up such reincarnational intimations, but are not patient enough to let these come in to their own time, as they must. Instead, they demand reincarnation memories in ready form and at their behest, and they expect flattering ones at that. But as with other spiritual matters, the coming of reincarnation memories first had to be earned through the spiritual detachment and sensitivity needed for their reception, or else, if presented by discarnate teachers, they must be paid for later by being utilized fruitfully to achieve the tasks, probably difficult ones, now facing that individual. Spontaneous projections. I seem to have gone backwards in time, not that far, not hundreds of years. And I'm standing outside a rather handsome structure, stone structure. It seems like a small concert hall in the vicinity of a university on the grounds. And there's plenty of universities in the spirit world, that's for sure. And colleges, all sorts of, educational institutions. This is fairly traditional looking, almost like an old English university. And I'm there because there's people slowly coming out from a recital by Nick Drake. And I'm standing just far enough away that they can see me standing there and take me to be a passerby of some kind. And my aim is to ask people their reactions. The people are streaming out, not in a huge crowd, but enough that I have to make an effort to sort of single some people out. And so a couple are going by me, and I smile and say hi. And they said, hey, hello, how are you? And very similar to how they would say it on Earth. And it's a couple, man and a woman. And I say, I'm reporting on the eternal life of Nick Drake, and was wondering if you'd care to comment on the music you've just heard. And they're very happy to add their reactions. They had a wonderful time. The music was even more lovely than they would have hoped for. Nick is in perfect voice. The guitar sounded glorious. And the small orchestra played very well. The phrase "we were just blown away" was used, and much effort is being given to sort of try and detail how they felt, but they're almost too overwhelmed to describe it. Oh, it's just marvelous, says the young lady. Just marvelous. I didn't know much about his music before coming here, but Gerald here did and was a fan and encouraged me to come, and I'm so glad I did. And they're asking who I am, and I explained the situation. And they said, oh, that's wonderful. You're going to put this on the internet and have people see that he's still playing? Oh, that's so great. Thank you for doing that. And I said, yes, well, not everyone will believe me. They'll think I'm, indulging in a wish fulfillment fantasy. And, well, she says, tell them that you're not. And I said, yeah, okay, well, I'll give it a go. And, but, they said, this is the first time you've done this? And I said, no, I've done it quite a lot over the years. And certain amount of people will absorb the information and believe it. And, but perhaps they're, already converts to the the notion of a functioning afterlife, rather than some fairy tale myth or complete nonsense, as many people do feel. Anyway, they wish me good luck with my project and wander off, and still in a bit of a daze. Okay, so other people are coming by and I'm smiling and they're chatting amongst themselves, and I don't want to disturb their post-concert bliss. They're obviously all very satiated and pleased. One couple of fellows are standing together chatting, and I approach them and they go and ask them who they are, and we're fans from the old days. We saw him. We saw him years ago in folk clubs, and didn't know who he was, but were quite taken. Went to a folk club that we normally go to, and he was opening for somebody, and we were like, "Wow, this guy's good," and it was the times. There was lots of great music around the early 70s, late 60s, and we just made a discovery, and then we kind of lost sight of him, and heard one of the albums, and in fact bought one of the albums and played it lots. But life takes you away. You can't go to every concert you'd like to go to. You can't buy every album you'd like to buy. And then we heard he'd passed on, and got on with our lives, and became old men and passed on ourselves. They're just laughing as they say this. In fact, one of them's smoking something or other. Like, it's a hand-rolled tobacco, I think, is what he's smoking. And they're saying, in response to my question, yes, they really enjoyed this concert. It was wonderful. And just everything that you could hope for. And they ask who I am, and I explain. And, I knew his records back in the day, but lived in Canada, couldn't get a chance to see him at all. In fact, I don't think I even knew about his records until he passed on. And they weren't terribly well distributed over there. And but obviously grew to love them over the years. And I'm now collecting information about him to put on the internet for those who are still in love with his music, but not really in touch with his afterlife. And they congratulate me for that. Nice going there, man. That's really something. And you want to come and join us for a drink? And I said, okay, I'll catch up to you later. And off they go. One of them patted me on the back. And one of them just turned and just as they're walking away and says, "Do you go see other music from musicians that are here now?" And I go, "Oh yeah, I've seen a few things here and there, and I do try to report on it and keep people abreast of, all the continuing creative activity that goes on here." And he smiles and goes, "Okay, great." And they walk off. And again, there's people around, and some people, some other, a mixed group of people come. I think they overheard what I was saying to those guys, because there's people are kind of milling around. There's pathways and grass and benches and places, to hang out. And somebody comes up and says, "Are you the guy that puts stuff on the internet?" And I go, "Yeah, that's me, WordofGord." And they go, "Yeah, I heard about you." And And I think it's great what you're doing. And it's amazing that you can even like do it. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, you start it and you get practiced and you can't stop. And I said, I'm glad it's spreading a little bit. It's taken years, it's taken years to get this thing established. And even then, it's on a very small base. There's not much trumpeting of fame here, I can tell you. I get a couple of hundred people will look at my videos, and that's about it. Although, I suppose the old one, when I first interviewed Nick years ago, has gotten several hundred views, now that I think about it. But it takes years. It does take years. And, but, it's a commitment. It's a service. It's something I certainly enjoy doing. And the projection of consciousness. And he looks at me and says, oh, so where are you now? And I said, well, I'm here with you, but I'm also sitting at home in an armchair projecting consciousness. It's not that hard. Just as spirits in this world can project back to the world of the so-called living and do a small manifestation so that the living will see them clearly. You've heard of those stories. And he goes, they say, well, one of them in the group says, hey, I tried it. And I think it sort of worked. Although my mother was crying all the time. And I said, it was kind of almost like counterproductive. But, I made the effort. And it looks a little crestfallen. And I sensed that this person had been something of a overdose situation and felt rather ashamed of themselves. But, has recovered. But, calling up the memory, So can I say to the internet audience, and I'm waving my arms at this 6 or 8 people, that you really enjoyed the concert? Oh, yes, they said. It was marvelous. Wonderful. Epic. Transcendental. I'm hearing all these different words. And who knew things could be so beautiful after all this time? Even more beautiful than, we'd ever heard before when we were on Earth. Everything's so rich and full in this world, so much better. And it's so hard to describe, just better sound, richer harmony, colors. Well, let's not even get started on the colors. Yes, and in the spirit world, the manifestation of sound can also be seen as color if you're tuned in. Seems like some people are tuned in and others aren't, but it's a bit like a light show, a laser beam light show, or something like that. Sounds emanate from the orchestra and the musician, and they rise up as colors, various blended colors, lilacs, mustards, orange. More subtle than those words will convey, but it's there. And after a while, you sort of get used to it. It's just the way things are in that world. So other people are coming by and nodding and smiling and listening in as I talk to this group, and they sort of get what's going on, although it's only seems like the one guy had heard about me. And how had he heard about me? He says, no, I recognize you. I saw you at another gig with some of the surviving members of the dead. Or surviving, he laughs when he says that. Yeah, surviving means something completely different here, doesn't it? And I dropped in a few, more than one club gig there. And then as I'm chatting with them about that, I'm starting to think, boy, do I really want to get that well known? Do I want people to be picking me out every time I show up at something? Maybe a low profile is better for this kind of work. And that sort of indicates my own couple of my own issues, you know. And why am I hiding? Why am I keeping a low? Why do I want to keep a low profile? Do I not want to be out front and center? Maybe that's one of my issues. It's always interesting how your experiences there as well as here point up certain character, well, we won't call them blemishes. We'll call them attributes. So, yeah, I'm still milling with this crowd, and it reminds me of my enjoyment of milling with a post-concert crowd on Earth. I quite like to do that and feel the vibrations of happiness and satisfaction from a crowd well catered to, well entertained. And I've been, as Gordon here on Earth, I've been to many of those, including the Toronto Symphony, who give many great performances, and many profoundly powerful and almost ecstatic renditions of the classics, and some of the not-so-classic classics. The uplift, the spiritual and aesthetic uplift to be gained from a live performance is really as unique. And although recordings are great, live is even more exciting. And I'm certainly one prone to that particular habit. And just hanging out here in this sort of, it's almost like a decorative garden around college buildings. It probably is. I've not really looked carefully, but it's an astral plane college that looks very traditional stone English, and you can tell people are happy to be here. And let's see if I can. Well, I can't really shift. There's people standing around yakking, and I'm not quite the center of attention. People are talking amongst themselves now, and I can't really slip away to that pub that those guys invited me to. But I will another time. But be assured, music is life. Here and there. And people gather for all sorts of reasons. Religious, devotional, educational, intellectual, argumentative, debating, all sorts of reasons. And the habits are continued on from Earth. People have the same inclinations and desire to interact or not interact. Things change, but not as much as you might suppose. And there's a normalcy to life here. Once people settle into it and go, oh my, I can do this, this, and this here? Great. And relationships, friendships, enmities, they're all here. And I'm glad to be able to report that to you. And it's a pleasure. And with that pleasure, I will bid you farewell for now. Next time.